Student trustee Kvinsland.
Yes.
Trustee Bloyd.
Yes.
Trustee Griffin.
Yes.
Trustee Morton.
Yes.
Trustee Ohm.
Yes. Thank you. Item 6, reports. Canute, you're up.
All right. Sandwich. I sent out a survey. I did only send it out today, so I only got 6 responses, but people do have some things to say. This person says, making school start at 9 would be really nice. I don't know if that's possible at all. It doesn't seem possible, but I don't know. You guys can update me on that.
We give you 15 minutes, you take an hour.
Yeah. All right. And then this person says, we want 105 release on Wednesdays like Fort Bragg High School. It would give us better job opportunities, less burnout, and higher student attendance. Cut out lunch. Start school earlier. Doesn't matter. This would help attendance. So I don't know if we could do it like Fort Bragg, if that's an option, but I could give an update to everyone, all the students, if that is a possibility or not, because they do continue to ask me.
To change the time?
Yeah, to something like Fort Bragg's time.
I think that would be up to admin or the board if we wanted to direct them. I know if you lobbied for ending daylight savings time, that would get you an hour.
Interesting. All right, so for the next question, I said, with AE weeks approaching, could you please tell us what your favorite AE week experience has been in the past? This person says, college tours or Yosemite. This other person says, being with friends for a week. This person says, I don't have any. This person says, first responders. And for me, I'd probably say going to Big Flat. That was pretty fun a couple years ago. We went up there with Fosse, and it was a good trip. That storm rolled through, but it was still a good experience. And then I asked, if you want to pull up the...
Did you send me one? I didn't get
Oh, no, it's fine. I'll just report on it now. I said, how excited are you for AE Week? 2 people said that they are 8, like 1 being not excited, 10 being really excited. 8, 2 people said that. Two people said a 4, which is less. 1 person says a 10, so they are super hyped. And then 1 person says 7, so they're excited. Yeah. Overall, people are definitely excited for AE Week. We're almost there, and that's definitely exciting news for all of us because we get to have time off to learn about stuff, and then we have actual time off with the spring break after that. And then for my next question, I asked them to give me a little report about sports that they're playing. This person says there has been a rise in track and field players over the past 3 years, along with many impressive achievements by our basketball and volleyball teams. This person says swim teams have won the last 2 years of conference, and we hope for this year to be the 3rd. Basketball made it to the 3rd round of NCS, lost to the future state champs, and then lost in the first round of CIF D6 against the number 1 seed. And I do know that they are going to be swimming, I forgot exactly where, but they left today for a meet. So good luck to them. And that is all I really have to report. Yeah, I think that's all.
Thanks, Canute.
Yeah.
6.2, Kim?
I'm going to start off with looking at the chronic absenteeism numbers. Mark, you had asked last time I presented if we could see it over time. And so if we go to the next slide, we can look at, this is the K-8 over time from 2018. You'll notice there's no numbers for 2020 and 2021. That was during pandemic time, and attendance was a little wonky anyway, because we ended the school year in March for 2020 and then 21. How we took attendance was different because we were in a hybrid situation. So those years are missing. But that is the overtime and to our current, what we are now. I wanted to give a comparison of how that compares to the district numbers there in blue and then also the state in yellow. And this is something that we have always struggled with pre-pandemic. Our chronic absenteeism numbers are pretty high compared to what the state average is. So one of the things that I came up with when I was looking through this was that there is a relationship between our test scores and our absenteeism numbers. So you see during the dip of the years, you can't see the years across the bottom in this slide, but that it kind of follows that. That dip there. Here I've put how we compare a comparison to the state as well, because I think that's important. If you go back one slide, Erin, to the math ones. There we go. One of the things to point out is how much better we are doing about the state as time goes on, and maybe our recovery is a little bit better, that we, as of this year, did 27 points higher than the state compared to previous years, even pre-pandemic. So something to point out. And then I gave an ELA comparison as well. Just that there's a causal or a relationship there. We don't know if it's causal or correlation, but something to keep in mind. The next thing I wanted to, I forgot about this. It just so happens, I was talking with a colleague about this today as I was preparing or putting finishing touches on it. And they said, there is a video blurb in the New York Times this morning about just what you're talking about. And so I thought it's a 2-minute clip here, and I thought it would be great for you guys to see. Hopefully, if we can get it up. It's exciting, yeah. trying to portray, that we're not the only one dealing with this. As a reminder, missing 10% of the school year is 18 days. That's about a month of school. So it is a big chunk of time.
Kim, do you have a sense for where between the schools that went back the soonest, the ones that went back the latest, where we would fall on that range?
About the amount of time we were gone
Yeah.
from school. Well, I was trying to remember when we came back to partial days. It was maybe April of.
Yeah, it was mid-April.
Yeah, so it was almost a year, basically,
2022,
then.
right?
So we are an anomaly in comparison to.
We were late on the,
Right, we stayed home longer, because that was like 0.3 year to a half year
Right.
of being closed. And we were closed from March until the following April.
Yeah, actually, I think it was 1 year ago today.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh, yeah. You're right.
I mean, not 1 year ago.
5 years ago
1 year-
today.
5 years ago today. It was
Yeah.
March
Yeah.
13th.
Yeah.
happy 5 years.
Goodness, we made it. The other thing I wanted to talk about is that there is a new law that affects our kindergarten through second grade students, or schools, how we approach reading difficulties, and that we are now required to adopt a reading difficulties risk screener. So you as a board will have to adopt a screener by June, and that we need to start implementing the screening of all kindergarten through second grade students starting next year. We also must inform parents about this 15 days prior. I've worked up things to put into our welcome back to school packets that, hey, this is something we do. We are, I would say, ahead of the curve because this is something we already do through universal screenings, and we'll talk a little bit about how they relate. And then one of the things that it will be kind of a new piece, we do this in little bits, but not for all students, is that parents need to be notified of the results within 45 days of the assessment or the screener. Let's see. The purpose of this is to ensure early identification and interventions for students. If students are having reading difficulties, we want to intervene with them as soon as possible. It's used as a piece of a broader process of looking at student progress and helping support students. Their hope is that it will inform individualized instruction also, so teachers know, okay, this student needs this student needs this, and this is how I'm going to teach it and intervene with it. To measure student progress, identify needs, and also communicate with parents is a big part of it. One thing that they're very clear about it is that it should not be used for diagnostic assessments or eligibility for special education or 504s. So that was something that was all over and basically says the same thing 3 times there. But it's not used for high stakes or diagnosis, which will be a hard thing to communicate to some families, I think, kind of that in between. That this is a screener, we're using it for school and education purposes only. Special ed assessment is a different process and uses standardized assessments for that. And schools don't diagnose.
Kind of, you have to like put your blinders on though. If a student is obviously severely deficient, you're going to take some other steps. It seems like sort of a.
Right. Well, it's not the end all be all. As the thing that this is a piece of the broader process. So kind of what we're doing right now is we use a universal screener. We use DIBELS, which is the screening tool that we will be recommending to the board to adopt. And what it is it gives us a snapshot of where kids are. It doesn't mean that's the only tool we use, but it tells us, okay, what do we need to start doing with this student? The new, which they call the M class, we right now use paper and pencil versions of the screener because it's free to us online. And it's a great program, a great screener, but one of the things that it's going to help us dive into is a little bit deeper on what is going on for those students. And so we intervene with them and support them in many different ways. For students who are responding to those interventions, great, fantastic. You know, they've been screened, they've been identified. We are supporting them and intervening with them. For students who don't, then we have to look at what's next and other things. And that's where it might lead to special ed assessment or 504 assessment. So yes, you're right, if that was the only thing we did and that was it, then it would just be like, okay, we see what's happening and we're gonna ignore it for now. But it's just a piece of the process. Where we are. So So Jason, myself, and Megan, our RTI MTSS teacher, went to a county screener evaluation session. There are lots of different screeners out there. The state has come up with a list of screeners that schools can choose from. And so we went through a process with them. We have determined that we like the M-Class Dibbles screener. As I said, it is something that we've used for years as a universal screener, giving it at the beginning, middle, and end of year to track student progress. And I'm in the works with the company to work on a contract both for implementation of the digital version, online version, and professional development for it for August, so teachers know how to administer it with fidelity, and then also use the online program for data analysis and tracking. The digital interface is something that we've avoided buying into just because we've thought, oh, we can do that on our own. And one of the things that it's going to help us do is easily track students year to year. Right now we create our own spreadsheets, we input it, but the year to year tracking in that is kind of difficult, especially for teachers who are not comfortable with Google spreadsheets. And so this program will do it for you. It will also run analytics. And then also develop parent communications. So that part of the law that we have to do, communicate with parents within 45 days, it helps develop the communications that goes home. And then also provides this screener in Spanish, which we have to provide this screener in the student's native language. So that will help us. And I think that's it. Maybe? Yep. Are there
Are
any
you
questions?
doing screening, you must be doing screening in TK, is it different? How is that working in now that there is a TK?
So we are using the BPST, the Basic Skills Phonics Test, to help screen them. It's a little bit above them because it's geared toward mostly kindergarten students who have been taught letter sounds. And TK is kind of a precursor to that. And so that's an area for us to work on. Chelsea has been a part of these meetings and our typical PLT meetings. And so my goal would be to develop something particular for TK that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other questions for Kim? Comments? No? Thanks, Kim.
All right, thanks.
622, Jason.
I don't have too much tonight, just report that the LCAP season is upon us, so I spent staff meeting at the high school yesterday reviewing our LCAP goals and results mid-year, and then I also presented a PowerPoint that was given to the superintendents by Nicole Glenser, who's our county superintendent, about the executive orders that were issued back on January, whenever inauguration day it was. That I think created a lot of stir in the educational community. So it was a really good PowerPoint. I can share it with the board too. Just kind of talking about what the orders were, kind of summary, and then a potential impact to California schools, which isn't really very big right today, the impacts.
What are the impacts? What are the impacts?
Well, it varies on the various orders. So right now there are very few. For us in particular, we don't get a lot of federal funds, and really it's for the state of California to comply, that it will trickle down to us. It's really guidance and documents and various mandates. So really nothing financial at this point. I'm meeting with the K-8 a little later in April, I believe, and then the parent and community LCAT meeting is Monday, March 17th. And then all school districts in California received educator effectiveness funds 4 years ago, and we were given 5 years to spend $240,000-ish in professional development for teachers. So we've spent to date about $140,000, bringing speakers in, sending staff out, providing workshops, trainings, paying for courses. So we have a lot of money to spend next year. So the admin team, we're working up a plan to use those funds, and so I can report on it later. But hoping to do something pretty big with our staff, whether it's staff bonding or bringing someone in to do some work with us for next year. So. And then MCN, really no update of significance with the city of Fort Bragg and the sale of MCN to Fort Bragg. We are issuing layoff notices, or the board will consider layoffs tonight for the MCN employees, and I can explain more about what those are at that time. But the clock is ticking. We really would like to get this sale done by June 30th, but we've kind of held up the process. We've struggled with getting our financials to them on a timely basis. MCN is severely short-staffed right now, and we're kind of holding off hiring anyone. So Meg has spent quite a bit of time down there to help out. So hopefully we can get it done. That's it.
Questions for Jason? Comments?
What percent of our budget is federal? It's really tiny, right?
I don't know the percentage. Meg might have that number, but really it's mainly Title I, Title II, Title III money, all those titles. The school lunch program and special ed is a lot of funding. I think the special ed kind of goes through California, but the funding is really federally funded for special ed.
Right.
We can ask her when she does her report.
Yeah.
Oh, I have it.
Anyone
It's,
else, anyone else up there?
President-
Questions?
She just
Yes.
unmuted.
Nothing.
She wants to say something.
Meg, do you want to address that question?
yeah, so in Fund 01, General Fund, the titles, they make up about 4%, 3.7% of total general fund revenue. In the cafeteria, I don't have the percentage of federal dollars in the cafeteria fund, but because California is universal meals, the state backfills anything that the federal government isn't backfilling. So if the federal government stops the USDA dollars, then potentially the state of California may not be able to backfill universal meals, so they may not continue to provide universal meals, I would think. And then I don't really know what the percentage is in SELPA because it's kind of all commingled. You know, the money comes into SELPA and then it kind of gets dispersed in various pots.
Lived up to what they originally intended in the 1970s.
Right. So they're not paying what they should be paying, but there is a small portion, and I think it's the IDEA portion, and for us it's like 98,000 is what that portion is. So I suppose that's what we could lose, which means we'd have to backfill special ed by that amount, by that additional amount to continue the program.
It could be us or it could be the state.
The we could be us or the state because our SELPA is one of the highest funded SELPAs in the state. It's like a basic aid district. And so if those dollars are not there, I don't know how close to the edge of this, like basic aid type funding our SELPA is, but if they are anything like us, which I kind of think they might be, even though they lose the federal dollars, the state won't backfill them because they're already one of the highest paid SELPAs in the state. So like when the federal government says, or the state says that they're going to increase SELPA funding, our SELPA doesn't get an increase in funding because we're already funded higher than we should be funded. Just like we are a basic aid district, we're funded by property taxes higher than the calculated funding through LCFF. If that makes sense.
Yes.
Okay,
Thanks, Meg.
Thank you.
sure.
Any other comments or questions for Jason's report or Meg? Okay. Well, excuse me, it's almost 5:30, so we're going to jump to item 7, Parent community comment. Anyone here to comment on anything that is not on this agenda? Do you have anyone online, Aaron?
I see no one.
Okay, thank you. We'll go back to 6.4, board trustee reports. Mia, start down there.
6.3 first.
Sorry, thank you. 6.3, bargain, MTA, or MUTA, as we've redubbed ourselves. Josh, welcome.
No, I want to hear from you right now.
This is your friendly neighborhood special education teacher. Thanks, Meg, for the breakdown and everything. It is really, alarming and all that stuff. And so I don't have a whole lot, and I know that's how long speeches always start. But I just, I was thinking this morning, existential, not crisis, coming in the parking lot and like, man, speaking for a large group of people is not easy. And so thinking about like, how it feels like things are falling apart, things are being dismantled constantly. And what I was left with was like the sense of gratitude, and I just wanted to express that today again, just to take a quick moment for that. We had to cancel our general meeting on Monday just because people are spread so thin, and we didn't feel like we had enough to even plan it to just gather. And so that was kind of disappointing on my end as the president, trying to, organize this. And there were people who wanted to show up, but it's hard right now for everybody. So just taking that moment of gratitude for all the people in our school district family. So Aaron, you were at like the top of my list because I keep thinking about like all the stuff that has to happen from the board meeting here, in the evenings and, going home late to your families and all that stuff. But the district office family, our custodial team who was like on hands and knees, scrubbing away at something under a bench to make sure this place is clean is amazing. Our bus drivers, and I had to make sure I write so I don't forget anybody, but our food service team, making sure that transition works for the new people that are coming in to take over that legacy is amazing. And also our amazing students, our families. It's going to be crazy having these without you next year, Canute. That's, the live stuff you're doing in the studio is going to set up for things that are, keep taking the radio station media program higher and higher. Amazing stuff. Our paraprofessionals that, day in and day out, our students, I see the high student needs and the things where they jump in and try to help these guys that are just really struggling right now. I hear a lot of younger guys, and it's just amazing what I see. Definitely want to give a shout out to our paraprofessionals, like I said, the counseling team, the incredible teaching team that I work with at the high school here, and then our admin and our office teams, which we appreciate. And then, of course, I put in all caps our board members, because we recently asked out if the negotiations team would like to have a board member attend the negotiations to just have another voice in there. And so Wind Spirit was kind enough to respond back, wrote an official letter back, reminding us that we're on the clock when we go to negotiations. You guys are volunteering and all those things. And so I just really appreciate all that the board is doing. There is a legacy here again. I just came across a ruler the other day, or I was working with a student, and they're like, Mr. Morton, and I looked around, I thought maybe you'd walk through the door, and it had Jensen first. I'm not familiar with the name Jensen, and then yours was written on there, and there's a few highs and stuff like that. And I brought it in my car and forgot it, but anyways, I don't know if you want that little relic of thing. It's so cool to be part of this bigger thing, and I really feel convinced, and I think our teams are feeling that too, or the union, that we're all on the same team working towards this better, and there are hard decisions to be made, and it's not easy. So I recognize that. One other thing, and I also wanted to, with our admin team, I had a member come to me that was pretty frazzled with how things are going with workload. Talked to Kim, felt good. Kim recommended talk to Jason about it. Member let me know, was so relieved after talking to you, Jason, from it, and it just brought such a sense of peace, so thank you for that. It's reminding me how much that communication really matters. So thank you all for what you do. The last thing I wanted to add was I went to the Lake Mendocino County Leadership Meeting, and they brought up that Prop 55 is expiring next year, and I don't know if that's been discussed at all, but that provides critical funding from tax dollars, and it's $9 billion annually, I think, in California. We got a breakdown from the regional union rep that MUSD received $84,800 last year, so that's a huge chunk of money that could be lost too in the future. So CTA is putting together a signature drive to get on the 2026 ballot. So they're going to call on districts to pitch in with the effort to get signatures so we can get this on the ballot. They figure with the families and there will be enough to get it on the ballot. But something to think about down the line. That's kind of scary too with the Prop 55. So that's all I have on my end. Does anybody have any questions? No? Okay.
Thanks, Josh.
Thanks again. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Josh.
Okay. 632, CMUS. Anyone here for CMUS? Anyone out there, Aaron?
I don't see
No?
anyone.
Okay. Thank you for catching that, Emily. So now, 6.4, Board Trustees. We'll start down there. Mia?
I have nothing.
Okay. Emily?
Let's see here. I think at the last meeting, I was just finishing up my middle school basketball season, so I'll report on that now, which is that we had a wonderful season. Both of the A team and B team for the girls did great, but the A team in particular had a fantastic season, ending the season on a 10-game win streak, including 2 tournament wins in a row. It was the first time in the program's history that I've been involved in that we had won any tournament. We won 2 back-to-back in 2 weekends, including one against Fort Bragg in their tournament. So that was a whole lot of fun for me. It was just a wonderful group of kids. We finished up the season actually by traveling on February 16th down to a Cal women's basketball game and doing a campus tour at Cal with one of our high school graduates, Maya Sholin, who's there now. That was super fun. So super fun to be involved in that program, which I do along with my co-coach, Noah Gold, the athletic director here at the high school. And next month, I'm getting to go on one of the Alternative Education Week trips. I'm doing the Think Global, Act Local trip, which will involve service to various local nonprofits, including Humane Society. We'll go stay at a farm outside of Willits for a couple nights and do work on the farm. And then also do some work with the Mendocino Land Trust here on the coast. So I'm really excited about that. And then I get to go on the 8th grade trip in May. So just excited about all of my opportunities this spring to actually do fun stuff with kids.
Thanks. Nothing. I'm going to go to Oaxaca with the culinary and the Spanish class. I'm really looking forward to it. It's going to be lots of fun. And I was thinking, when you mentioned that, Tobin, just almost a year ago that we were in Yosemite, and what a great trip that was. Looking forward to hearing all the stories when everyone gets back. That's all I have. 8.1, modernization and construction management update.
This might be the last update.
Actually, this is my swan song for you guys.
Fantastic. I mean, we love you, but we don't want to see you.
Yeah. It's been a pleasure working with you guys and Jason to carry on with the Phase 3 and Wind Spirit and the rest of you. So I don't have a lot to report. The contractor is done. There's a couple of lingering things I'm working with Tobin on that either are above and beyond the contract or warranty items having to do with door hardware. Seems like we've had some things with door hardware. But for all intents and purposes, they've met their contract, and we've settled on the terms of the final amount of the contract. The GMP was comprised of, the traditional contract, what the amount of the construction is. Then there were components that were contingency amounts or allowances that we were carrying for certain things like dry rot, et cetera, et cetera. And then there's a traditional contingency that we carry, but actually when you do a GMP, it's kind of buried in there as part of that number. So as I've been reporting, we've been spending all the contingency and then some, but what we haven't been spending, it's kind of a left-hand and right-hand thing. There's a number of contingency items that we never spent all of it. So at the end of the day, where we are is the last change event is a credit of $71,000, which is saying that we're finishing the job $71,000 under the GMP. And how that translates into what Emily always asks is, what do we got left? My projection of about $1 million remains. Now that sounds good, but I know a number of that has been already dedicated or spent on Phase 3, so you don't have another $1 million to spend because you've already, and I can work with Meg and pin that down. We had a little session about a month and a half ago, but a good measure that's already been allocated or earmarked or spent. But no big surprises. We came out with our arms and legs and a little bit left over. So what I'm working with Tobin on is like hardware. There's some hardware that we don't like that was spec'd that we're changing out, and we're either going to do it with maintenance or have Lathrop do it. There was some hardware that actually blew out of the door, the closures, and that's a warranty item. depending on what the material of the door is, depends on how you install it. The standard installation is what was installed, but I question, it should have been the optional installation of a through bolt for that kind of material, because the fiberglass just doesn't, I'm not real familiar with these fiberglass doors. They're a little bit different than what's traditional FRP doors, which have aluminum frame and aluminum housing inside that kind of anticipate where you screw things in. This one doesn't, and one failed already. So Lathrop's come and repaired it, and they did a through bolt, and it sounds like they're going to participate with us to go and replace all the ones, those particular doors, and do through bolts, because that's really the way. Well, it wasn't explicit in the plans. It's not explicit in the only thing it says in the instructions, the installation instructions from the manufacturer is, these are the standard methods, and the optional method is a through bolt. And it kind of, it's a judgment call on what are you screwing into, or, you know, and the fiberglass I don't think really helps. So they're working with us to change it out. They haven't really balked at it. So that's probably the biggest thing that we have left now that just came up a couple of days ago or a week. And then there's some door hardware, like at bathrooms, that we needed to swap out, and some sweeps that we'll work with the district maintenance to swap out that I think are a better product. The ones that are there let wind in sometimes if it's high. That's where we're experiencing that at the culinary classroom door. So I think there's a better product we could swap out, and it's fairly painless to do and not that expensive. When we go through the slides and see if I got anything else I could talk about. I don't think so. That's it. I mean, now what my biggest goal is to say, this is my swan song, is I don't want to be billing you guys anymore. I'm getting the IOR off the payroll. I wanted everything said and set done, you know. That's not to say I'm gone, because I'm still coming to Fort Bragg. And, you know, I told Tobin and I told Jason, call me if you need to. The closeout process with DSA as Wind Spirits Learning is a long and arduous process. So, you know, well, we've got the numbers settled. We've got the IOR that did the final push and pull test of doors. There's paperwork that follows that I'll help usher and get done, but sometimes it takes months to get done, and sometimes it actually takes years. You know, some projects, like I'm working at Fort Ross right now, and when I went in for a permit, they said, well, what about this job in 1990? I had nothing to do with it. I was working in the city at that time. But they kind of hold you hostage for somebody else's woe. So sometimes jobs don't get closed out for 30 years, but that's not our case. We don't want those problems in 30 years. We want to close it out. So we'll stick with it and get it closed out in the next month or 2 or 3 if it takes. That's kind of where I am. I'm wide open for questions, though, as usual.
You finish up and you dot your I's and cross the T's and all that.
Mm-hmm.
It does go on forever in some ways.
Yeah, it does.
And one of those is energy use. And I'm just, you know, in looking at our history with the grammar school and whether the solar was working like it should, or, you know, in this case, it sounds like the electric bill is higher than we were planning on it being. And
okay.
Just wondering if there are people who can come in over time and assess, the experts who can assess those things, and whether there's some switch we could turn or some habit we could change that would affect energy use, because it does seem like the, you know, electrical system is using more than we had planned.
Okay.
There's no finger pointing. I don't think it's just learning how to make it as effective as possible.
Yeah. I think, you know, one outfit is like Sage, which you engaged with through QKA, as far as, you know, they could probably do a historical analysis once there's some history to look at.
Yeah.
And compare it to beforehand, and then come up with some suggestions. I mean, I just put heat pumps in my house, and, you know, my bill is way up there now. So I'm adding solar,
right.
Which sounds, you know, and you know, the guy that installed it said, just leave it on, let it do its things rather than turn it on and off. It's when you try to ramp things up that the wheel starts spinning. If you just let it try to maintain at a certain level, it's better. So it's those kind of habits that somebody could probably look at over in the next year or two and say, okay, these were good habits, those are bad habits to change. But I don't have any magic bullet right now. So, but it's good that you're watching it. I mean, this is the first I've heard that the bills have gone up. I mean, I would expect them to, but I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't have any sense of how much it's jumped.
Well, I also put heat pumps in my house, and I'm finding them somewhat confusing, because some people are saying leave it on 24/7, and some people say, no, that can be more expensive, and
Yeah, it's kind of how you use the place. I mean, house, you're there all the time. It's really you might have to experiment, do a couple months here and a couple months there to see, but, and this is relative to this too, so we're just not talking about houses. But, the heat pump, when it operates and just trying to maintain, let's say you want 68 degrees and it kicks on at 65 or kicks off at 69, it's usually a 2-degree variant when it turns on and off. When it's just trying to maintain between those variants, it's only using 2 amps. That's not a lot of amps. But if like you turn it off, the guy that was telling me, like, somebody would go to work and turn it off and then come back at home and turn it on. Well, when it's trying to crank up from not 2 degrees, but 10 degrees, it's running at like 8 or 10 or 15 amps, like, depending on the unit. So, it's exponentially spending more money just trying to get back up to be maintained. That's why they say to keep it running. Although like me myself, I have it turned down automatically in the evening, but I don't turn it down to nothing, So I'm kind of trying to find a happy medium too, and I don't have the answer yet either, because I've only had it for 6 months or so.
well, and I'm sure school is different for a variety of reasons.
Yeah. What happens with schools is when you live in a house, you're using it all the time. Like things that are not used during the weekend, and you turn everything off, then it needs a ramp up on that Monday, and that gets really expensive. So they may have some better suggestions for that. For example, I'm trying to think, like passive cooling and heating works good in houses because you're there all the time, but like an auditorium where you're going to have a talk and you don't have the heat on for weeks, and then you have an event or a convention and you try to turn it on, there's a lot of thermal mass in there that you got to build up, and it gets, so some approaches work better for different uses.
Yeah,
So,
more to learn.
yeah, more to learn. So,
All right. Thanks, Tom.
all righty. Well, been good to work with you guys.
You
Okay.
too. Thank
All
you.
right.
you so much.
And I'll be running
Don't be a
into you guys.
stranger. Yeah.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Tobin, was there a training for the HVAC units for phase 1 that you participated in, and how to use them and the thermostats and all that?
Yeah, we walked around. There was the guy was supposed to put phase 1 on the app, and
Let me ask you a follow-up. Do you let all the teachers run their own thermostats, or are they locked out?
no, they can run them.
They can run them, right? Because I think it's possible that if admin took the reins, there might be some potential energy savings. And of course, if someone wasn't happy with it, they could come say, hey, can we change this? But if across the entire campus, everything was pushed down 2 or 3 degrees, and also it was clear that they were maybe not being turned off, but they were dropping an additional few degrees on weekends and holidays. Marcia?
Speaking as someone who generally has a warmer classroom, if it was not all the way up, but set to a lower temperature on weekends or even overnight.
Because of all your equipment that's in there generating
Well, yeah,
heat?
that's part of what I'm supposed to say, kind of like, it's just nice to have a classroom that's like 66 to 68 is kind of like comfortable at this point.
Mhm.
After a decade of the classroom.
Right.
If it's below 62, then things get a little more comfortable.
Right.
So if it's that temperature at night, great, the fact that we automatically schedule and set,
Mhm.
I wouldn't care.
Mhm.
Probably other staff members might be down for that, but,
Mhm.
there's going to be some savings there for sure. But right now, it's just, I have to remember to set
Right.
62, or like, and then every morning set it back up to 68.
Do you feel like you have the skills to do that, Tobin, or do you think we would need?
Well, I have an app, but
Right.
I don't have phase 1 on the app, so that's what,
Oh, you have phase 2, but not phase 1 on the app?
yeah. So
Okay.
they're supposed to hook up the other phase.
Okay.
This building, but I don't have that.
Do we need someone else to nudge someone?
Like, I mean, there is, like, Marshall's room is set on cool, but not on auto or heat. I mean, there might be some settings
Yeah.
we can look at.
Are we accidentally running air conditioning to bring the temperature back down?
You know, it's over certain temperature. They all have that. Yeah.
Would it seem, my perception is that maybe having someone, once they're done, theoretically done, come in here and like review the whole site with us, and you could sit there and like, yeah.
Yeah, we did that like with the gym because it was getting too hot.
Mhm.
We tweaked some things and we were supposed to be able to like turn it off. But yeah, some follow-up things didn't ever happen. But at this point, I think it would be handed over to maintenance because it's the Pelican. But you know, it's like people are probably going to contact it anyways, right? It's not really a playthrough at this point.
No, but I think we've still got them on the hook a little bit to make sure it's all functioning right, and
Well, I think it's
and-
more or less
and-
functioning. Like today in the tech center, it was cycling, but when I looked at it, the heat was set at like 68 and the cooling was set at 70, so it kept oscillating between the two. So I just pushed the cooling up to like 75 or something.
right,
And it have to get much warmer for the cooling to come on.
right.
So, like, because there's a cooling and a heating setting. And so you have to, like, keep the cooling setting, I think, a little bit higher than the heating. Or you're going to get this dual
Yeah.
going on between the two systems, the two
Right.
options.
Which is definitely not energy efficient.
Yeah. So, yeah, there's little things like that you know, right now, the heat is running, I think it's maybe like the alcove or something, heat set at 75.
So that's no good.
I can turn that down.
But can you lock that out so that no one can change it?
I just locked it. I'm not quite sure what around it is, but locked it.
Okay. Well, I guess what I'm at, if you're comfortable being the one, it seems like this needs to be done for this whole campus.
Yeah, but probably not during the board meeting.
No, not during board meeting, but we were discussing it.
But no, I
Mark
totally
brought
agree.
it up,
It should
and
be-
I don't know, and you know, if you want to do it, Tobin, great, but I don't think it necessarily should fall on you. And I also don't think with the turnover of our maintenance staff, it should be only them that know how to do it. I think it would be important if a couple different people know how to run it, but that it's reviewed and pushed down. If there's some money to be saved, like Dawn just said, these heat pumps, there's a bunch of them here. And yeah, while each individual unit is energy efficient, there's a lot of them. And if they're all running, well, it's money.
It seems like a real complex situation to me to manage that in this big of a space.
Maybe, unless we just say our set temp is 66 and lock it out at 66. I don't even know if, like, cooling, do we even like turn the cooling off? We get a heat wave, then maybe we turn it back on. But pretty much, except for maybe some IDF closets that have their own units,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you just set the cooling to, you know.
Take it. Yeah, exactly. Take it way up there, lock. But they all need, I think it's important that they all get locked out. Because who's to say some student doesn't walk by, right? And then that thing runs for a week or a month, and we don't know it.
Yeah.
Maybe we throw that on you to follow up on this.
I like that idea of locking it
Yeah.
at temperature.
I will say that staff have their own, some like it hot, some like
It's fine, but I think they need to have to ask you or ask someone before they just get to run their thing at 76 because they like, Baja weather. Like no, sorry. I mean, maybe a degree or two. But I don't think we're right? I mean, unless we want to negotiate that some other way, I don't think that's appropriate to just, we're trying to save energy. I don't think we can just say, fine, you all run it how you want to run it.
Right, but at the same time, every room is different. If you're on the west side of a building versus
Right.
the east side and so on.
Right, and so once we set it all at a uniform, and then someone says, hey, it really feels cool. Someone, what? Yeah, you're right. Okay, we're going to raise this one up a degree or two. But there's some collaborative feed loop on this to really do what we can to bring the costs down some. That's my personal opinion. Okay. 8.2, phase 3.
Not too much to report, just still chipping away at some of these phase 3 projects. We did make the decision to extend our construction worker for another year. And so we're set for that, so that's exciting. Emily, thank you for creating a spreadsheet for us. Meg and I are going to work on getting the latest numbers and getting that back to you next week.
And that's,
Yeah, I think the truth to the answer of where we're at after phase 2 for phase 3 is a little more complicated because Meg's numbers are a little lower than Dawn's numbers as far as what we have left. She thinks it's more in the 800,000 somewhere. But that's not including the interest that was gained on the bond money while we had it, which is about $700,000, which brings us back up to more like 1.5 million, of which I don't think we've spent more than a few $100,000 so far. So I think we're in pretty good shape, but I think I want to spend another month and we can maybe report back next month with a better sense for where we're at.
Yeah.
After we've plugged in the costs to date and we have a better sense for it.
yeah, I think that's great. I appreciate you doing that. And then once it is filled in, and I think Jason ought to go and share it with the whole board,
Yeah.
and then we can have another discussion.
Discuss, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've made some good progress on the soccer field. They've got more work to do this spring. There are some terrace seating areas out there in addition to the renovations on the field. We're putting in a scoreboard soon. So the track was resurfaced essentially, and the ramp down there is in better shape than it's been in years. Yeah, while Terry was out there, he did some good work on that whole area. We don't have big piles of dirt for kids to climb over to get between the two fields anymore, which is really nice, actually. And I've actually been talking to some people about the tennis court situation. I've talked to Kylie and Jen Saunders at MCRPD. It looks like they're willing to put in up to $60,000 and to put that in their budget as long as we're willing to pay at least $60,000, because it would be sort of a match. We may need to spend more than that to get what we want. But I've started to research some of the various options for resurfacing the tennis court and improving that. So.
That'd be great. Also, the
Right in
grass
time for you
looks
to leave.
the grass looks great. Yeah. Oh well.
Yeah.
The grass looked really great out there. I walked by it today and I was like, whoa, it's like real grass.
Yeah. We've got a little more work to do because a lot of the work was done in the winter. There's some unevenness to it that we're working on, and we're going to do some more reseeding in the spring, which should make it come on even stronger. So.
Great. And then I know we have solar project contract coming up on another item, but that's maybe part of phase 3, I guess. I think we're calling that phase 3.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Any other comments on that item? Questions for anyone? Okay. 8.3, second interim budget report. Meg.
Yes. Sharing my screen. Okay, so this is the second interim budget report. So this slide here shows us where we are here at second interim in comparison to where we were at first interim. So not much has changed on the revenue side. We had more state revenue in the form of CTEIG. They approved their grant, so it added $60,000 to our budget. ELOP is expected to go up by about $10,000. We got a K2 literacy screening grant for 1.8, and Prop 28 schools is going down by about 5,000. Local revenue was up 88,000. The biggest contributor was the special ed SELPA allocation, and then the Medi-Cal reimbursement is up about $20,000. And we got the college initiative grant for $10,000, and then some donations, $7,000, and MA's up about $1,000. In here, since we were talking about federal revenue, this is our federal revenue. So this is about 3.7% of the total revenue. And then Josh was talking about Prop 55. And so Prop 55, Prop 55 was a proposition that extended the tax, the added tax that happened when we went to LCFF funding. So when we went from the old-fashioned funding in schools and we went to LCFF funding, they increased temporary personal income taxes to help support schools. So what Prop 55 did is it extended those income taxes for another 12 years. And so the expiration date is in 2030. So we do receive part of our LCFF sources is this Prop 30, which is the EPA, the Education Protection Act dollars. And those dollars do amount to about $84,000 for us. So we get $200 per ADA because we're a basic aid school district. An LCFF school district gets some percentage of it, and they get something more than we get. And when it goes away in 2030, for us, because we're basic aid, we will lose that $84,000. An LCFF funded school will be backfilled by the state, so they won't really lose anything, is how I understand it. So this next slide shows our expenditures from first interim to second interim. We have some savings here in salaries and benefits. Most of this is coming from leave replacements. We have increased books and supplies and operations for, to add in the CTE and the local donations we were getting. And then service and operations, I had to increase by about $110,000 for utilities. And the biggest contributor of that was PG&E. And so this little chart down here shows what we used July through January 23-24 and July through January 24-25. And so the big ones that increased were transportation, and that was up on the electric school buses. So they're using more electricity for that. And then the high school was up quite a bit. So we're using $164,000, $165,000 so far, July through January this year, compared to about $84,000 last year, $85,000. So I increased the budget for PG&E to about, it was at about 160, and I increased it to about 260. So, sure.
Do you have a fuel oil savings amount? Because there should be a significant offset there.
Well, there's not. So for the fuel, I had the budget at a much lower rate. I had it budgeted at the high school for $10,000. And the fuel amount for transportation, we still have some fuel buses, and yeah. So at the high school, I had already, that was already dropped, and so I didn't increase the PG&E, obviously as much as I should have, and so so the savings there is only going to be about $10,000.
But so I'm trying to, maybe you can do a little more research at a later date. I'm trying to understand the actual net cost increase, excluding what you were anticipating, like the actual usage, pre and post phase construction work.
Okay, so you want the actual usage, or what I was budgeting?
And other fuels. I think it was all fuel oil, right? There was no propane?
I think we would have to go back to get a real accurate reading on that. We'd have to go back to like 2018, 19.
Because of the pandemic?
Because of the pandemic, right.
I'm not looking for precise, but it would be interesting because, yes, we anticipated the electricity to go up quite a bit. The question is, did it go up way more than the difference that we saved in fuel oil?
Yeah, that's easy to do. We can see what we used to budget or what we used back in 18, 19.
Yeah, I would really like to see that, and then additionally a projection of what the solar.
Because I might not be quite as critical on what temperature to set the thermostats at. depending on that outcome.
You're not gonna like it. I'll tell you now.
I will. So the only caveat I have in this is that prior to me being here, a lot of the utilities were not coded by site. So it was just utilities for the whole school district, right? In the budget, it wasn't coded by site. So
Let me hold on one sec. Let me ask a question that maybe you don't have the answer, or maybe you. Did someone come in here and turn the furnaces off during COVID?
I would know that.
Marshall's nodding yes. Right?
There was not.
No. Okay.
I don't even know if the furnaces worked.
Well, the one up here worked.
Yeah.
The gymnasium one wasn't working well. And we could your high school PG&E lumps the entire site. Is that correct, Meg? It includes community school, because I think it's like four different
Right.
meters or something.
Right. It's everything that's considered high school up on the Hill campus.
Okay. Right. So it's almost like we have to wait a year, really, to get good info. All right. Well, I guess the fuel oil figures, if at some point you can find those for what you think is the most accurate, since you've been with us. And then the electricity, we might have to wait a year to actually get accurate numbers.
Okay.
Carry on. Thank you.
Was the high school the only site that used fuel oil?
Well, there was a tank down at the gymnasium. I mean, all within what you're calling the greater high school site. Nothing's changed at the community school as far as.
Right. So there was no fuel oil used in any other site?
K8 used it. Yeah. Are you talking about district-wide or just here?
I'm talking about district-wide.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't Albion have propane?
Yeah, Albion,
I think.
Yeah.
K8 is propane and fuel oil.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll see what I can do.
I don't think there was almost no propane here, right? It was all fuel oil besides incidental stuff.
But I think doesn't the K8 uses fuel instead of propane, don't they? Yeah. Okay. I'll have to see, because that might have been combined as well, but I will look. Okay, back to expenditures, other expenditures. Capital outlay, we're purchasing something with CTEIG dollars that may or may not be a capital outlay. When we budgeted, when we applied for it, it was a capital outlay. When the most recent price came out, it's not a capital outlay. So this $5,700 may land here, may land up here in books and supplies. Transfers out have been reduced. So transfers out are contributions we make from the general fund to the cafeteria program and to preschool and to any of the other funds, but this is mostly related to cafeteria program and preschool. So the cafeteria program I reduced the transfer to the cafeteria program from the general fund for projected higher reimbursements and lower retiree replacement costs. And then the preschool has seen a little bit of savings from leave replacements. And then this is the summary. So we had revenue of 10.24 at second interim, 155,000 up from first interim, expenditures up 135 from first interim. We're deficit spending 585,000, and we had more revenue of 19,000. Our beginning fund balance stays the same, and our ending fund balance increases by about $20,000. This 20,000 here, and these are the components of our ending fund balance: 10,000 for revolving, 693 restricted, our 4% required reserve. Other designations are local accounts, local site accounts, and like lottery and MAW. And then unappropriated, we're we have 893,000, down from 927 at first interim. And then this is the multi-year projection. So in this section here, LCFF sources, LCFF EPA, this is the Prop 30, Prop 55 that Josh was talking about that's going to expire in 2030. So in here in the multi-year projection, I didn't, property taxes don't come out, P2 property taxes come out at April 15th. And so that'll be the newest, most accurate projection of property taxes that the county is going to give us. So once those come out, I'll redo my tax projections, and so it's gonna change, you know, the current year budget and the multi-year projection, and so that will happen when that comes out. So these projections for taxes and deferred maintenance, LCFF, and district of choice, they're kind of the same as at first interim all the way through. Federal revenue, or for all the revenue, I took out the one-time and carryover and increased revenue by about 1%. So next year's revenue, 25-26, is pretty much flat with this year's revenue. 26-27 goes up slightly, 10.3 million, and then 27-28, which is one extra year, goes up slightly again, about 10.6 million. Salaries and benefits. So for 24-25, I've taken out anything that was staffing change. So we had the beginning of the year, we had some overlap between retirees and their replacements. So, you know, those types of expenditures just came out of salary and benefits, and then salary and benefits got the step and column increase, and any other increases in taxes, like in the PERS rate and the STRS rate and stuff like that. And then books and supplies, and services and operations, again, one-time dollars come out, and I increased kind of, you know, like a COLA about 2%. I kept the higher PG&E costs in there. And then transfers out, you know, it reduces in this year, 25-26, because of the extra costs we have this year in cafeteria. So we all told we have expenditures of 10.7 million in 25-26, about 10.7 million 26-27, and 10.9 million 27-28. And our deficit spending is 585 this year, 431 next year, 332 the following year, and 360 out in 27-28. And then this is a summary of that. At the end of this year, we have estimated ending fund balance of 2,081,000 at the end of 25-26, 1.7 million at the end of 26-27, 1.3 million, and then at the end of 27-28, under $1 million. And again, you know, a lot of this is going to change once we get the updated P2 taxes, because our revenue is going to change. Expenditures won't change, but revenues will change. Our unappropriated ending fund balance goes down each year accordingly, 893,686, 526 down to 244. And each year I put in the negotiation reserve of about 2%. And then this is just what's coming up next. We have P2 taxes coming out April 15th, and then P2 attendance will be coming out here shortly. May revisions will be here really quick, and then we'll have the LCAP budget hearing, and then the LCAP and budget adoption. And that's all I have about this. Well, thank you.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you, Meg. Appreciate it.
You're welcome. I need you guys to approve it. You guys need to take action on it.
I'll move to approve the budget.
Second.
Further discussion?
Student trustee Kvinsland?
Yes.
Trustee Floyd?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes. Thank you, Meg.
Thanks so much.
You're welcome.
That was 8.4, deferred maintenance. Jason.
really too much to say about deferred maintenance. Some things have been pushed off to 25, 26 that were supposed to be done this year, but since I started in July, we hadn't made a plan to do those things. Really, the biggest expense is a new pickup truck. Our truck is going to, our current truck that we use to haul the trailer around and to do big loads, it's, from what I'm being told, it's going to be about $10,000 to $15,000 to fix, and it's in rough shape. So excited to get a new vehicle here, so we can start doing some of those things that we've been putting off. We've had a load of paper in Fort Bragg the entire school year, and we just haven't gotten it. We haven't needed it, but it's still sitting there, so we will get it as soon as we get a truck. But we haven't needed the paper. It's good for us to use the paper in the back anyway. Let's see. Other than that, really nothing. I don't really have anything to say about the budget. It's looking fine. We do want to get the floor done out in Comshie. That's one thing that we do have on the docket here for 25, 26, and some work out in Elk. Let's see, on the roof, I believe. Clean the roof out there, but you know, the big things that we took out, we took the $150,000 that we had budgeted for the playground out of deferred maintenance. We're going to use that. We're going to use developer fees for that, and we're in the process of we're just about at the point where we're going to select a playground for the K-8 and hopefully get it done this summer. So there are a lot of projects that we've done this year that have nothing to do with deferred maintenance. So in April or May, I'm hoping to come with just a whole list and some pictures of what we did throughout the year. So we do have a lot going on, but not really much in the deferred maintenance account. You know, this says, I don't know if this is an action item. I don't know why we need to approve it twice in the year, but we approved the one in October, so I don't think this one needs approval. It's just mainly a report.
Any questions or comments on that item? All right, thank you, Jason. 8.5, consideration of leave requests. We're gonna, I think, break these up into 3 different parts in case members feel differently. And do you want to, but you can go ahead and go over all 3 if you'd like, or if you want to do them one at a time. Jason?
It's up to the board. I can talk about each one if you want.
Sure.
So,
why don't you guys just go ahead and go over all 3, and
okay,
then then if we have more questions on each one, we can
sounds
come
good.
back.
8.5.1 is an employee looking to do the reduced workload. This is where they're requesting 40% reduction, so they would be paid a 60% salary but full health benefits, and they would get a full year of service credit for retirement, and then they would sign a contract, and they would retire at the this request, I believe the last it was left was they would retire after the end of the 26-27 school year. So that's a good thing. It's a win-win for the employee and for the district if we don't need to backfill. And if we did approve this, I don't think we would need to backfill. Most likely we would not need to. 8.5.2 is an employee that is currently working 50%, wants to continue 50%. That is fine. We may want to ask them to go to 60% depending on need, and we can always do that later. We can always add, but we can't cut later. So that's the case with that one. And then the last one is a leave for 1 year. This is always a tough situation. In the recent past, we haven't approved this kind of leave in the recent past. We have in the more distant past. It's just a gamble. If we can find a temporary employee to fill that position for 1 year, then I'd be all for it. It's just we have a lot of openings this year, so these are all. I mean, that one in particular is a very, very tough one give a solid recommendation on. My initial gut response was that I was not for it, but if we want to roll the dice and see if we can find somebody to fill that position, or with the knowledge that we do have an employee retiring after a couple of years, if we could use the other 60% extra person, that would be fine too. So, anyway.
And the prior, you recommending approval on the other two?
Yeah, I am.
Comments, questions on, I guess, all three, or we can just work down them?
Yeah, why don't we just go one at a time?
Okay.
I think the first one's a no-brainer. This is a Willie Brown Act that a lot of teachers have done in their last few years before retirement. It allows them to get more retirement, and it saves the district a little bit of money along the way. And I think it's
And there's
a
not
win-win.
there's not a need to replace, so we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, in this particular instance, yeah.
I move we
Well,
approve.
okay, that's fine. I can open it up after you. Please go
Yeah,
ahead.
I move we approve 8.5.1.
I'll second it.
Great. Any comment from there? Anyone online, Aaron?
See no one.
Any other discussion up here? Comment? No. Okay. Please call.
Student trustee Kvinzland?
Yes.
Trustee Boyd?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Alm?
Yes. Thank you. Next one, 8.5.2.
For me, similarly, we've been providing this 50% leave for a few years. I see no reason not to continue it. If we feel later like we need to increase it, great, but I think we should approve it. It sounds like it's been working so far.
Any other thoughts on this one? This has been several years that's been this same level, correct?
So I'll move to approve 8.5.2.
Second.
Any other comments, discussion?
I see none.
Okay, go ahead. Call.
Student trustee Kvinzland?
Yes.
Trustee Boyd?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Alm?
Yes. Okay, thank you. 8.5.3.
This is the 1 year leave request.
Yes.
What happens if we can't find someone?
If we approve this and we can't find,
A temporary 1
A
year.
temporary, then what would happen?
We would have to do just a shuffling around of positions, and there would be a cut somewhere, if we can't find anybody.
maybe there'd be a cut. You mean a
Well,
cut in
somebody-
offerings?
Somebody would have to move over to that position.
But we wouldn't be cutting.
In other words,
anyone.
another position would not be filled.
Right, so whoever moved over, then their position would be open.
Basically, staff would have to be, admin would have to would shuffle staff to fit needs.
Right, but if somebody moved over to cover that position, then their position would be open. And so we'd have to look at the least harmful movement.
Right. I don't know if does that answer your question?
As much as it can be.
The other thing is that we might have very high class sizes. Is that right? We don't have to, right? Yeah.
Or is there an option to advertise for a probationary person that might be more enticing to people and coming over here for a year and deal with that?
That thought has crossed our mind as well.
I don't know.
Great minds thinking alike. I don't know if it's in fact possible, but I mean, it sounds like we're going to need to hire a few positions this year anyway, and we're never going to get all of the people at the exact things we want all of the time anyway, to some extent. There might have to be some shuffling just to fill roles. That's just my guess. It's not my job, thank God.
Yeah.
But given, other positions that are opening up. I mean, to me, it's sort of a separate question, and my personal leaning is to approve the request, because I think, I value teachers who've been in this district like this teacher for a long time and want them to come back. And I think that's something to encourage and to support. And I think then we figure out the next steps after that. That's my personal leaning. you know, we don't know what the status quo is if we don't approve it, right? We don't know a lot of things, like, you know, but
Yeah.
if that increases the chance of this teacher actually returning to the district, I think that's a good thing for us, so.
Yeah. That's true.
Anyone else want to comment from out there, or do you want to speak? No? And no, yeah,
I would just second what Jason said. My concern is finding the replacement. And if, I don't have a problem with the leave on its merits, but I want to be able to staff my school and make sure kids are getting what they need. And so if it is an option to advertise it as a probationary to offer the best opportunity of getting someone to replace it, then I would.
Which means offering it as a permanent position, right?
You what?
Which means offering it as a permanent position, yeah, and it's probationary for the first 2 years.
Then my concern about it would be no concern at all.
Which brings up a good point. Then, so that's a good point, that we wouldn't have to lie about it and say it's not, we could say it's a permanent position, but then if we end up doing layoffs, they would be last hired, and so it would be a layoff. I would not non-reelect someone because of the budget. It would be a layoff. So I would be more.
Returning. And if we're hiring 3 new people, it's very possible one of them will either be laid off or not come back anyway,
or someone
right,
will leave.
within a year
So,
or something.
yes,
Right.
I would be more in support of that, to not call it temporary. Temporary is a scary word for me, because it's hard to find someone. So.
Yeah. Well, and again, I think that's not the decision we have to make tonight,
No,
but if that makes it
but-
easier to approve the leave, great, but I think that makes sense.
When you're hiring people, even if they're not temporary, they're temporary in a sense anyway, is the point.
Yeah.
They're probationary,
Right.
right?
I mean, not legally, but
Yeah, I just think it's hard for people to uproot their lives and move to the coast for a year-long job that they know is only a year long. That's been my experience with hiring. We have a problem hiring anyway, and people aren't willing to do that, particularly if they've taught a number of years and they're coming over. Why would they leave a district where they are gaining seniority and are established to start over just for 1 year? It's just hard. Whereas if there is the opportunity to be able to stay, people are more willing to.
I'll move to approve 8.5.3.
I'll second it.
any further discussion?
I don't see anyone.
Go ahead, Aaron.
Student trustee Kinsland,
Yes.
trustee Boyd,
Yes.
trustee Griffin,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
I'm totally torn. I'm not going to abstain, you're not supposed to.
Nope, I'm not going to let you.
I guess I'll say yes.
Yes,
trustee Holm,
yes. Thank you.
I remember back when there used to be 10 applicants for every job. And we interviewed 5 people.
Yeah, when I first started, it was 30 applicants, and I spent hours going through paperwork. Not like that anymore.
And the abalone would just jump into the boat.
It's true.
Yeah.
8.6, consideration of possible action on resolution 2025-01 regarding permanent classified employee services, 9.0.
Yeah, so these were the layoff notices that I, 8 of them are at least, or 7 of them are, for MCN. So the way this has to work is we need to issue these layoff notices by March 15th, because if we don't, and the sale goes through to the city of Fort Bragg, and the employee says, well, I don't want to work for Fort Bragg, then we have to have them on the payroll for the entire school year. So that's why we have to do this. If the sale to the city of Fort Bragg falls through, we can always rescind it. So that's why we have to.
And they're all aware of this.
They are.
What happens if the sale goes through partway through the year?
We can rescind it, and we could, we can, I think we would keep it, not rescind it, but then we would enter into a short-term contract with them or something, or an MOU or something with the employees.
You said it's two, you said that covers 7 of these. Who are the other?
Yeah,
what are
the other
two?
ones are, right, Aaron, they're the 2 temporary classified employees, the temporary custodian and the temporary construction worker, which we need to lay them off and then rehire them. That's, because if we don't do that, then after 2 years, they become permanent.
Okay.
So both of them will continue on next year. So they are aware of that as well.
Comments, questions, motion?
I move we pass the resolution.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
I don't see any. Student trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Floyd,
Yes.
trustee Griffin,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes. Thank you. 8.7, consideration of possible action resolution 2020-2502, temporary certificate employee services, 0.6 FTE.
So same thing
Similar?
here. Yep, we need to lay off a temporary employee.
Is this associated with MCN or no?
No, this is a certificated employee that
Okay.
came back on a temporary basis. It was grant funded this year.
Okay.
I'll move to approve resolution 2025-02.
Second.
Any further discussion?
student trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Floyd,
Yes.
trustee Griffin,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes. 8.8, consideration of and possible action on resolution 2025-03, resolution making findings on energy savings. Jason, this has to do with
So this is the
solar
resolution
project?
that allows us to accept, to not have to accept the lowest bid, even though I believe we did anyway
Right.
for the solar. So we
Mark.
I move we pass resolution 2025-03.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion?
student trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Floyd,
Yes.
trustee Griffin,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes. Thank you. Okay, 8.9, consideration of solar project contract with Centrica Business Solution Incorporated. The board will review and discuss solar contract between MUSD and Centrica.
So there was a lot of back and forth on this. Rush. It was a good job by, I believe, our legal counsels on both their part and our part to get this done. So it's all done. However, our de facto attorney on the board might have some.
Yeah, I have a few typos that need to
Some
be cleaned up,
typos.
but that I didn't get in time
Right.
to
Right.
to make this cut because of the notice required. I'm 100% in favor of the contract. Obviously, we've negotiated it. We've already made our notice of intent to award. This is just the buttoning up the paperwork of actually signing the contract. There's, a couple of typos, like, defining terms regularly
Is it
throughout.
mainly, so I saw when what you sent is the contractor and the.
It's the contractor language in one paragraph, I
Contractor
think,
language,
and then
okay.
there's that one other paragraph that got bolded and underlined and put into the next paragraph instead of
Okay.
its own paragraph. Those were the two big
Okay.
ones. So it's immaterial cleaning up
Okay.
typos.
Okay.
So I would propose that we approve it and allow Jason to work with council to clean up those immaterial errors and then execute it.
Second?
I'm happy to make that my motion to approve the contract and execute it with those errors cleaned up.
Thank you. And your second, Mark?
Second.
Thank you. Further discussion?
student trustee Quinlan,
Yes.
trustee Floyd,
Yes.
trustee Griffin,
Yes.
trustee Morton,
Yes.
trustee Ohm,
Yes. Excellent. 8.10, 2024-25 annual transportation HTS. What's that stand for?
Home to school.
Home to school plan.
Hey, Meg, if you're still on the call here, can you explain why we are doing this home to school plan again?
Could have read the next line, answer my question.
Yeah, so So I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago when they passed a bill to give schools more transportation dollars in addition to the transportation dollars that are included in the LCFF funding. And so basically, if you spend more than your LCFF kind of entitlement for transportation, you can get a reimbursement of 60%. And so in order to get those dollars, you have to have a board-approved transportation plan every year. And so there's been some kind of debate on whether or not you need to do the plan if you're not really getting those dollars. So we don't qualify for the extra dollars. And if you look at the plan itself in the little table where it's calculating, our revenue we exceed. So we have a negative, what's considered, quote, a negative revenue. So it means we have too much and we're not going to get the dollars. And so there's nothing in Ed Code that says if you're not eligible for the money, you don't have to do the plan. What it says in Ed Code is everybody has to update their plan every year. And so my fear is if we don't update the plan every year, even though we're not eligible for the money, if we become eligible for the money one day and we haven't followed Ed Code every year, would that make us ineligible in the future? And so I don't want to be the one to make us ineligible in the future. And so I say, let's just approve this plan every year, even though we're not eligible for the funds, if that makes sense.
That makes sense. Thank you. Do I have a motion?
I so move.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No?
Student trustee Kvinzland has left the building. Trustee Floyd?
Yes.
Trustee Griffin?
Yes.
Trustee Morton?
Yes.
Trustee Ohm?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, 8.11, policies, bylaws, ARs.
So these are information only, so we'll discuss more in depth in April, but I want to bring the use of school facilities back because we are having trouble with the definition, a couple definitions, well, just one definition really of what a season is. So we're just running into it. The more requests we get, we're having trouble making sure we're treating everybody fairly, and I think if we just brought it back and talked about that one definition, that would really help.
Sure.
So I want to talk about that in April, and then we, a couple weeks ago, I sent out guidance to the staff on what to do if an immigration enforcement officer came to the schools. Right around that time, I received some guidance from the state then about what to do, and something to send out to school personnel, and it had a spot on there for the district policies on responding to immigration enforcement, and we don't have one, and so I thought it would be a good idea to at least bring one forward to see if it's something we want to adopt.
So this is a proposed new policy.
Yeah, it would be a new one.
Okay.
And if we adopt this, it seems to me it would be important to deal with it at staff meetings so that everybody's on the same page. You know, that you and principals be at a staff meeting where everybody.
Yeah, so, I sent out some guidance on what to do if someone comes and who to call and when to let them in, when not to let them in. So I know that was distributed to all staff, and I'm not sure if Kim and Tobin have talked about it at your staff meetings, but.
Not at a staff meeting as a whole, but our office staff, we've talked about it and gone over it.
Yeah, because that's where it's mainly going to come.
All right, these are both information, right? No action taken on these?
Correct.
Okay. Item 9, future agenda items. Any additions to item 9? No? Okay. Item 10, we are adjourned. Oh, take note, next meeting in Compshe.